Stakeholders sign on to approve the introduction of the indirect health tax. Plus, in today's lifestyle segment, the human brain develops the most rapidly during the first 3 months after birth. And we'll discuss why forcing a language within a school system will not guarantee the students will learn it. Instead, it will backfire. 15 on 15 starts right now. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yentl Lieuw. As the 1% indirect health tax is being introduced on the island, various stakeholders from the private sector are signing on in agreement to the proposed tax for AZV. Jim Heppel, the CEO of AHATA, explains why increasing BBO to 2.5% is a more favored solution than driving up premiums. During a social dialogue meeting, members representing various groups and associations within the private sector put their pen to paper approving the indirect health tax to be implemented. Jim Heppel explains the issue at hand.
And we all recognize that there is a shortfall in the amount of funding available for the AZV program, that the amount of money that comes from the premiums, which is about 260 million florins, is about 140 million florins less than it costs to operate AZV. So the government has to contribute the 140 million to make up the difference. Well, the government clearly doesn't have that kind of money and is concerned about seeing that its contribution continues to grow year after year.
AHATA was very much against the option of raising premiums once again. AHATA's perspective is, instead of placing the burden on the employees on the island, spread the responsibility on the community. This way, the impact is not as significant.
There were a number of options on the table, one of which was increasing the premiums. And that was not something that we felt was a good idea, either from the employee's perspective or from the employer's perspective, because it means directly coming out of your pocket additional money. And we also felt that there had to be an effort towards introducing some form of co-payment or own contribution, because there are quite a number of people who are capable of and willing to actually pay for the contribution towards the health program.
The introduction of the indirect health tax settles a point made by AHATA to the government.
The agreement is that it's going to be a 1% indirect tax dedicated to the AZV by comparison with increasing the direct contribution through an increase in premiums. We like that idea for two reasons. One, we think it's a better way to fund the AZV. But secondly, it's something that we've been asking for a long time, that the government stops increasing direct taxes and increasing the cost to the individual and rather spread it over the community as a whole, because we think that's fairer. And we're very happy now that the government has decided to follow that approach.
In other local news, the Linear Park project required a hefty amount of investment and a significant amount of manpower to complete. It is unfortunate, though, how irresponsible drivers are because they are damaging the infrastructure. There is an issue with the Linear Park. The community needs to take better care of it. Several areas of the park are being damaged by cars driving over sidewalks and areas that are not meant to withstand the pressure of vehicles. The Linear Park is relatively new, but already you can see spots in the surrounding main area across Talk of the Town where a fix-up is needed. Something else drivers on the island need to be more aware of is where they are parking in downtown Orangestad. The Department of Public Works is working together with Arubus to implement a better solution for the issue of parked cars delaying streetcar operations. Parking in downtown Orangestad can be a headache, but leaving your vehicle on the rails of the streetcar is prohibited. The Department of Public Works, together with Arubus, are working together to provide traffic personnel to prevent drivers from parking on the streetcar rails. The orange and white barricades placed in Orangestad at the entrance of the bus station is to warn drivers that changes are coming. However, the traffic changes took place prior to proper signage and lights being put up. Marlon Cruz, the director of the Department of Public Works, says proper traffic changes with clear regulations will be implemented soon, as well parking meters will also soon be introduced in downtown. And on that note, we will be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back from the break. When does the human brain develop the most rapidly? According to new research, the speedy progress takes place just after birth. During the early stages of babies, they aren't only cute as buttons and crying often, but inside, their brains are developing rapidly. Human brains grow most rapidly just after birth and reach half their adult size within just 3 months. Researchers found baby male brains grew more quickly than those of female infants. Areas involved in movements developed at the fastest pace. Those associated with memory grew more slowly. Scientists say collating this data may help them identify early signs of developmental disorders such as autism. And moving forward in other lifestyle topics, if you can't seem to stop snacking, new research may have yielded a solution for you. Eating a single serving a day of beans, peas, chickpeas, or lentils can increase fullness, potentially leading to weight loss. In a study, it was discovered that people felt 31% fuller after eating an average of 160 grams, which is just more than a cup of dried seeds like beans and peas. These are high in protein and fiber, which are linked to long-lasting fullness and weight loss. What's more is, researchers note that foods like chickpeas and lentils can be used in place of higher fat animal proteins, which could also end up in weight loss. Now, back to school is just around the corner, so let's start the year fresh for both the students as well as the parents. It's safe to say more than enough students could use better homework habits, so listen carefully. When the school day is out, children still have a lot to do, including homework, so they need to make most of their time. Parents can develop smart and effective study habits. Here are some tips. First, schedule plenty of time for homework. Allow children a consistent place to get their work done so they don't get distracted. Speaking of distractions, turn off the distractions. TV and other electronics can interrupt, so turn them off throughout the house during homework time. Also, let them take a break from time to time to alleviate eye, neck, or brain fatigue. Let's take a very quick break. This is what's coming up next. A research study in Southeast Asia showed forcing a language on a student body is the least effective way to have them learn a language and like the language. Languages are important, especially on the islands of the Caribbean. However, just by officially declaring any language as the official language to be taught in schools doesn't help children speak it.
Of course, the language of instruction in the schools has been Dutch, but the people in Southeast Asia, they don't speak Dutch, they speak English. So we just did a research project there, inspired by places like Aruba and what you've done with Papiamento. Looking at the situation there for the Dutch government, they asked us to do a research project to find out what the people of the island felt about what should be the language of instruction in the schools. What language should they use in the schools to teach the children? Also, how people feel about Dutch, how people feel about English, which is the language that the people speak.
Results of the study in Southeast Asia showed students wouldn't embrace the language if it was forced on them.
What we found is that really teaching in Dutch is not helping people either to learn English or even to learn Dutch. That actually the levels in Dutch and the levels in English are both very low now. And what's really disturbing is a lot of the young people now have very negative attitudes towards Dutch. We don't want children to have negative attitudes towards any language. We want them to be positive about all their languages. So we are wondering why. And then people explain to us it's because Dutch is being forced on people in the schools, being forced on the students. They're not ready to cope with the Dutch when they get to school, and they really have a problem.
Professor Nicholas shares an example in Puerto Rico that reinforces the findings in Southeast Asia is logical.
In Puerto Rico, there are very negative attitudes towards English. Why? Because the United States, for 50 years, tried to impose English on the people, tried to force Puerto Ricans to study in English, to learn to read and write in English instead of in Spanish. They did that from 1900 to 1950. And up until today, 2010, people are still resisting English in Puerto Rico. They don't want to have English. Even though now all the schools are in Spanish in Puerto Rico, they've been that way since the 1950s. For 50 or 60 years, people still don't want to learn English.
There is a solution to encourage children to be interested in the Dutch language and for them to embrace it as well.
What we proposed in Statia was to have English as the language of instruction in all the schools in Statia, but to have Dutch as a strong foreign language, because it's a foreign language in Statia. Most children in St. Eustatius never hear Dutch until they get to school. That means it's a foreign language.
Thank you so much for joining us. That is all the time we have for now. Be sure to join us on Wednesday night starting at 7:15 p.m. right here on Channel 15 ATV, where we will have all the latest in lifestyle topics and the latest on the island. We'll see you then.